let me ask you if you see a screen that says a stroll through the Naval Cover Art Museum. Okay, perfect. So you guys know who I am. I'm a member of USCS. I've been the secretary since 1998, believe it or not. And I'm a member of a local chapter here called the USS Saginaw chapter. This is a presentation that I prepared back in 2017, presented at WestPEX in 2017. I believe I presented it at the convention later that year. And I've updated it a little bit for our presentation here today. So we're all collectors, and I know we all think about different things when we think about covers, but sometimes you think of naval covers and they're pretty plain covers. And a couple of these here are maybe not so plain. The Yosemite one is kind of pretty, but still rather drab. No cachet on the San Francisco one, just a little fish on the Philippine Sea, and then there's a nice silver cover, but it's still kind of drab. I like art covers. And this is an art cover. It's one that happens to crack me up every time I look at it because it's called Naval Ship as in naval oranges instead of naval as in naval ships. But someone took the time and effort to draw a profile view of the USS California, which I think is kind of neat. So as I said, there's a lot of art. There's a lot of handcrafted naval covers that I frankly think are very miniature works of art. And so we're going to go take a museum tour today. And you can probably see some paintings on the wall that you might even recognize that are masterpieces, but we're going to talk about some different masterpieces today. As we go through the museum, we're going to see some hand-painted covers, oil-painted, watercolors, hand-drawn. A lot of people use colored pencils. We'll see some pen and ink, some collage covers, some block printed, works by a lot of different artists and a lot of different subjects. These are collage covers, and collage means there's usually something pasted onto the envelope of some sort. A. Marie Schaft made the two on the the left, and she pasted some paper and a little cutout of flowers and some simulated lace to make some nice Valentine Day flower bouquets, which are kind of neat. Like most of the covers you're going to see today, many of them are one of a kind. There are some we'll see later on that some people made in a little bit of quantity, but a lot of these are just one of a kind. I'm pretty sure hers are there. She also made the cover in the upper right-hand corner. And if you look real closely, she has cut out stamps, postage stamps, to make her designs. The little girl is wearing one of the Army Navy issues, and you can see President Grant. Her umbrella has the, I believe that's the John Paul Jones stamp forming the umbrella. And even the flowers are made out of stamps. And then in the lower right, we have a Helen Dye cover. Helen was a USCS member. She did covers for a few years, maybe 36 through 39. I believe she did also some first day covers, so I'm not positive on that. And Amory Schaft was not even a USCS member. She's just someone who liked to do pretty art on covers. Another guy who liked collages was Henry Steinmetz. Henry was a USCS member. He liked to do stickers and cutouts and printing and kind of combine all of that. In fact, these covers here, you can see a printed cachet on the left of both of them, but then you can see some cutouts like underneath this postage stamp, and you can see some stickers forming his designs. And that was very common for the way he made his covers. Most of his covers were one of a kind, and I think they're very, very attractive. Henry made covers for about 1932 to 41, and he lived in the Los Angeles area. A couple other covers with some paste-ons Eileen Whipple made the one with the kind of looks like a Thanksgiving theme, even though it's canceled in a March. And that's another thing you see a lot of times. The artist didn't necessarily tie the cachet to either the cancel or the date. They were just more interested in putting pretty designs on the covers. In fact, in the lower right-hand corner, we have one by an unknown artist. It isn't signed. I don't know who did this, but they pasted a nice sailboat picture on, though I'm not really sure what a sailboat has to do with St. Patrick's Day, but it's still a very attractive cover. And then we got some really unusual ones here. Lady by the name of Lorraine Carlson did these. She lived in New York. She died in 1963. She was not a USCS member. I don't think she really collected naval covers, but she certainly liked to make some fancy artwork. The upper left-hand corner is from the USS Long Beach. If you can see that, looks like it was signed by the captain. The lower left-hand corner is celebrating Admiral Nimitz. In fact, she got Admiral Nimitz to sign the cover. Some of you may know the name Herb Robble. Herb was a USCS president. He ran a log auction for years and years, and in the middle right, you can see his picture and his signature. And the upper right-hand corner was actually his ship. He was CO of the Amphion for some time. So I guess there's probably the connection there for why she did this. She must have known Herb. And then the lower right-hand corner, we have what is basically a presidential race between Nixon and Kennedy back in 1960. I'm sure these are one of a kind. They're really neat covers. They're very, very unusual. Another Helen Dye cover, Christmas cover with a nice little religious theme and Christmas theme sticker. Lottie Eschliman also did first day covers. That's her cover down on the lower right, and it's a pasted on cutout of a woman. I am not sure I understand the significance of why there's no head on the woman, but you can see from the writing that this was for a chapter banquet. This was the Admiral Reeves chapter back in 1938. So it's probably something she might have made a few of just for the chapter members. And then as we go through the museum, we find some pen and ink designs. Some of you may recognize the one on the upper left. Fairly common to see the calligraphy on some covers. Sometimes they're in color like this peacock is here. Sometimes they're in black and white, but they're pretty fancy and very, very interesting to look at. Lower left-hand corner, I think we probably all recognize Admiral Halsey. And this was done by somebody who was probably not a USCS member. In fact, he wasn't a USCS member, probably just somebody who liked doing art by the name of Ian Milani. Hard to see in this picture, but it says he was a bosun. So he's in the Navy and he must just have liked doing art. W.E. Greenwood made the one with the Douglas aircraft on it. He did a lot of Asiatic sketches. He was a sailor aboard the USS Sacramento and the USS King. Did covers for a couple of years, 36 through 37. Was not a USCS member. Richard Hammond did the sailor throwing up over the railing in the upper right-hand corner. He was also not a USCS member. And some more pen and ink designs. You may recognize the name Burt Wickard. He was a longtime USCS member. Did some very nice pen and ink drawings, very detailed. Here you see the USS St. Paul on one of them, the USS Tuna on the other one. These were add-ons done later for the most part. And I have a few more in the presentation we'll get to see, but I just think his art was very beautiful. He was a Saginaw chapter member, but he was a member long before I became a member, so I never met Bert. Lower left-hand corner, Lottie Eschliman again with a Christmas snowman and a dog for Christmas time. And Clinton Orr, he was a USCS member, did some pen and ink drawings. We see here a profile view of the carrier. And it said that he used rubber inner tubes for the rubber stamp characters that he made. So not quite sure how he did that, but we can see he's got a rubber stamp on this one. A couple more Burt Wickard. You know, just the detail on the carrier and the one on the left is just phenomenal to me. The airplanes are really nice. Just he did some really nice work. Val Wolf did a few. He was not a USCS member. I don't really know anything about him, but this is a nice pen and ink Army versus Navy cover from 1938. And then the two on the right, I don't know who did those, but they're nice, very nice pen and ink with red ink with a couple of yachts for 1934 yacht races in Newport. And I had to show a few more Burt Wickards for the four Iowa class battleships. Each one of them's a little bit different. You can, if you look at them long enough, you can see some details on one that's not on the other. And then he drew the states, which very nice, appropriate cancels going with the nice appropriate cachets. Some more pen and ink. Gladys Adler did a lot of different art on cachets. This one's a nice little pen and ink of, I don't know, looks like maybe a Chinese ship or something, not quite sure. Nice St. Patrick's Day cover, signed by somebody with the initials HJD, but I don't know who he was. I've not tracked him down as a USCS member. Lavina May Mingos did the one on the lower left, and I've got some more of hers later on. And then one more Burt Wickard with the USS Triton, with a Triton corner card on this cover. Lavina May Mingo lived in St. Louis. She did cachets for 4 or 5 year period, about 1936 to 41. She was a USCS member, and she did about 1 to 5 copies of each of her designs. So some of hers were not one of a kind. A few more Burt Wickards. The one in the upper right-hand corner was done by a sailor who was on the Wilkes-Barre in Tokyo Bay on September 2nd. So he was there. He drew his own cachet, had the ship cancel it on September 2nd. So we're seeing a very nice Tokyo Bay cover. He served on the ship, and he's made some covers, but I think they had to have been probably pretty much one of a kind. Some more very nice pen and ink designs, another Lottie Eschleman. The upper right-hand corner is signed by somebody, Haas, H-A-A-S-E, not a USCS member. Don't know who this person was. It's a nice design. Towing a ship on a cart, US fleet, that away. Lower left-hand corner, little befuddled sailor. Not sure who did that cover. And then the one on the right, I am pretty sure was probably done by the person who mailed this letter to Forrest Strickland. Probably just somebody who liked to make artwork and drew a design. And John, that's a clipper mail for FAM 14, probably coming out of Hawaii to the United States there from the USS Nevada. A USCS member by the name of Eugene Mueller did a lot of ship event covers, and his were in color. They were all hand drawn, and he did certainly more than one of each. It said he probably did 75 to 100 of each design. So I don't know about you, but to sit down and draw 75 or 100 Orioles like that would take a lot of time and a lot of patience, and I don't think it's something I could handle. He not only was he a USCS member, but he was also in the ANCS, the American Naval Cover Society. and he was a member of what we would call chapters in USCS. They called them crews. He was a member of the freebooters crew. His designs, I think, are a little bit crude, but I think they're attractive. They're colorful. If you compare his artwork to, say, Gao Wing's, they're not nearly as polished, but I think they're still very nice designs and pretty to look at. Virginia Seath was a USCS member. She did a lot of pen and ink covers. She only did covers for a couple of years, 37, 38 probably. She was from New York. Nice, pretty one. Nice Christmas scene canceled on Christmas Day. Though I doubt the Canal Zone or Pearl Harbor, either one saw days quite like this with snow, but still a pretty Christmas scene. And sometimes they use pen and ink, but then they use some watercolors to spice them up. Gladys Adler has done that with the one in the upper left-hand corner, a nice, very nice design of a ship. Not the type of ship that the cancel's from, but it's a nice ship. And she added some coloring to make it stand out. Upper right-hand corner, I don't know who did this cover. I've seen a few of them, so it's not a one of a kind, but I don't know who did it. And then the lower covers by a guy named George Dunbar. He was a sailor aboard the Hamilton, and he did covers for a couple of years. He was a USCS member. And, you know, this is just a letter he was sending to somebody, a Betty Jane Tuttle, but a very nice design and drawing with some color added to it. Kind of looks like a Disney design in a way. Don't know who did the one in the upper left, which is another Christmas cachet. This is the first Gao Wing one I have in this presentation. It's not his typical submarine type Gao Wing, but he did some others, often had seals on them. Seal representing Department of the Navy and the ship name. This one has also a profile view of the LSM 285 here. So it's very nice, attractive, well done cachet. Lower left, some guy by the name of Jack Follow, not a USCS member, don't know who he was. Don't know why toy boats had anything to do with the New Jersey or May 6th, but it's an attractive cachet. And Virginia seems to have stolen a Disney theme, probably copyright infringement, but who cares? But it's a nice, attractive cachet featuring Bashful and Mother's Day, 1938. And we all know the name Paul Huber probably, because we've probably all bought some covers from Paul. Paul made some cachets. Paul was a submariner, and he made a few cachets here. One's for the launching of the USS Alabama. I've got another Valentine cachet on the right-hand side. Somebody by the name of J.W. Uhl. Don't know who that was. Not a USCS member, but it's a very pretty cachet. I've got another Burt Wickard. Burt liked to do Christmas covers every year too. And this is a Christmas cover mailed to Ray Costa, who was in the Saginaw chapter. And another probably copyright infringement, stealing the Bugs Bunny. But what Bugs Bunny and the Shamrocks had to do with September 23rd, I'm not quite sure. I guess Shamrocks maybe go with the word O'Hare for the ship name, but at any rate, it's a pretty cachet. And Ralph Lewis, USCS member, did some what I think are just beautiful cachets. I believe these were probably one of a kinds. And a couple of these are dated. For instance, the Oklahoma he signed in 41, the Chicago he signed for 41. Just really nice pictures and drawings of the ships with nice color. I just think they're very, very attractive. A few others here. Again, I'm pretty sure these are one of a kinds. Just very, very pretty. Whenever I see one, I buy one. couple more Ralph Lewis's up top. And the bottom, Marjorie Wilson was a USCS member. To me, this is a very fresh looking cover, even though it's from 1947 and when she was doing covers. So just a very fresh looking cover. And here's a Gowing, the typical submarine type cover. Very, very well done, very pretty, very attractive, nice colors, very nice lettering. This one's for the USS Swordfish, first day of postal services. These, believe it or not, are just simply personal correspondence from a sailor by the name of George Bromley. I have a fair number of these, and he just seems to have, every time he wrote his wife, he drew pictures of ships on them. And I just think they're beautiful. Probably, if you took the time, you could probably even figure out which ships these were. I've never tried, but you know, they got distinct colorings on funnels. Every one of these here on these 4 covers are a different design of a ship. So they're probably identifiable. And I just think they're really pretty. And he went to a lot of time and effort just to make a design to send to a letter to his wife. He was a sailor aboard the USS Richmond, and I have covers that are mailed from him from the 20s and the 30s. So he was in the Navy for a while.
Yeah, lower right is the US lines with those stack colors.
Yeah. And if you look, that three funneled ship is different from the other 3 funneled ship above it. So, and different from the other one on the left too. So like I say, you could probably identify every one of these if you went to the time and effort. Somebody named Yeltsin did this cover on the upper left. Sailor and a ship sailing in or sailing away, I guess. Bodish did a lot of Asiatic fleet art. He was not a USCS member. He was in the Navy. He did cachets for a couple of years, 37 through 39. And lower left is a guy named E.A. Peak, lived in Portland. He did cachets for 34 through 36, and he was a USCS member. Another very nice ship drawing. My name is Marjorie Wilson. She was a USCS member. She did pen and ink and watercolor drawings, which is exactly what we're seeing here. Her cachets were one of a kind or extremely limited, depending on the design. And as we go through the museum, we see some pen and ink and thermography. So thermography is when they sprinkled some powder on the wet ink and then baked the cover, heated it up, and the plastic flowed and melted and adhered to the ink. So it adhered to the cover. Every one of these are a thermographed cover, maybe a little hard to tell, but they are. Aileen Whipple did the Valentine's Day cover. Alice Beatty, she was not a USCS member, but she made the Christmas cover. She was an ANCS member. Flag Day cover, again, Aileen Whipple's. And then William Linto. Linto did a zillion cachets. He was a first day cover collector, naval cover collector, collector of oddball topics, and he made 50 to 100 probably of every design. So, you know, again, imagine him having to sit down and draw the globe and the ships 50 to 100 times and then color each one of them. So he was a very patient man, I guess, but he did a lot of neat covers. Irene Griffiths, she was a USCS member. She did a lot of colored pencil type drawings. The top cover is celebrating Eddie Rickenbacker's 20th anniversary of his air victory. I believe he shot down 26 planes in World War I, ace of ace at the time. And he signed this cover if you look between the archway up on top. It's canceled aboard the Colorado. What Colorado had to do with Eddie Rickenbacker, I'm not sure, but I guess the date was important here, getting the 20th anniversary, but it's a really neat cover. Paul Parrish, he was not a USCS member, but he did a lot of colored pencil drawings on covers. A number of St. Patrick's Day covers like this one. And the lower right, Father's Day cover, which is kind of an unusual topic to see on a naval cover. Don't know who did this one. And these four, I don't know who did any of them, but they're all colored pencil. A jack-o'-lantern, probably for Halloween 38. Another stolen Disney character up in the upper right. A sailor saying, "Open up the Golden Gate, Frisco." So it must have been a ship that came into port not too long prior to the date. May 22nd is canceled at Mare Island. And the lower right makes no sense to me whatsoever, but it's a nice drawing. First day opening the house that Wilson built. You know, it's canceled aboard the Wilson, but what the house has and what that has to do with it, I don't really know, but it is an attractive drawing. Another Irene Griffiths for Labor Day, also sort of an unusual, you don't see too many Labor Day covers. Very nice drawing of some cat tails and water behind them. A very attractive sailing ship. Don't know who did this one, but it's very pretty, I think. It's not signed, probably one of a kind. And we're going to continue on through our museum and see what the next section brings to us. And we turn the corner and we see some cut block printing. Don't know if who of you on the call may know Dave Curtis, but Dave and Sabrina also collect first day covers and make very similar cachets on first day covers. I'm sure Foster recognizes them and the name. These are all nice naval covers that Dave made and sent to me. And we have some watercolor covers. Somebody by the name of C.D. Lamp. He was a USCS member, lived in Los Angeles. Member of the Admiral Reeves chapter, did the sailing ship in the upper left. Ellen Dye, we talked about her before, also a USCS member. She made the sailing ship in the lower left. Don't know who did the eagle and anchor in the upper right, but it's attractive. And Ted Rotterberg did the cover in the lower right. Ted did covers for a couple of years in the late 30s, 37 through 39. He lived in Milwaukee. He was known as a shut-in, was the term at that time, lived in a convalescent home. And he probably spent his time drawing some very attractive covers. I have a few more in this presentation by Ted. And his were also drawn very, very small quantities. I don't know who did the Hula Girl, nor who did the Liberty Bell. Lottie Eschliman did the couple for Valentine's Day in the upper right. And Gladys Adler again, using a sailing ship design, but this time instead of pen and ink and a black ship, it's got some nice, pretty colors to it. An attractive cachet stands out. I do not know who Ben Craft was, but I have a number of covers from Ben Craft. I am sure these are all add-ons. I'm sure he was just somebody who was an artist who liked to draw on covers, but I think some of them are very attractive and nice designs. At least the cachet goes with the ship name up in the upper left with Wyoming. So you get the cowboy in Wyoming, you get the airship Shenandoah with the canceled Shenandoah. A couple of Albanys, and on each of them, one of them says USS Albany, the other one says New York City, so it's close to Albany. It's very pretty cachets. A couple more of his. He tied the Arkansas with the Arkansas Razorback flag and probably the battleship Arkansas, so that's a nice tie-in. Amory Schaff, she's the first one we looked at. She had the collage covers in the very beginning, but here she's used watercolors to paint a cover in entirety. And just by looking at it, you can see in this case, she designed the cover and made it first and then sent it off and had it canceled. So that's kind of neat. And James Buchwald did the Old Ironsides cachet. John Lyons is apparently a sailor, member of the Armed Guard, serving on the SS Trinity Victory at the time. Simply did some artwork on his design on his envelopes that he was mailing to probably his girlfriend back home, a Miss Helen Reed. I have a few more of these. He just did some really nice work. The bottom two, I don't know who did these, but they're kind of neat. Arizona cancel with a sort of an Arizona theme. And then a Milwaukee cancel with a not very Milwaukee type theme, but it's still an attractive cachet. Some more that I don't know who did these, but they're attractive. Shangri-La with some Asian scenes. Houston with the state of Texas and a cow, so nice theme there. A couple more Ted Rotterbergs, two on the left. Very nice USS Argonaut cover with a design featuring the sub, and then a USS San Francisco cover with a design that is not the USS San Francisco, but it's still a nice design. Another Gladys Adler cover from Memorial Day. And then what I think is a very attractive cover with the steamship on the upper right, but I don't know who did this. A couple more Gladys Adlers. The bottom one, she put USS Wichita in the frame, which matches a cancel, but certainly that was not a USS Wichita profile. So it just kind of reinforces a lot of these people, they just like to make the designs, they like the artwork, they really weren't naval cover collectors necessarily, so that's why their cachets don't tie necessarily. USS Luzon, probably, I'm guessing, done by this sailor aboard the ship, although I don't know that. This is a very attractive watercolor of a, looks like a Victory ship. Somebody signed it. His name is Boyer, although I don't know who he was. He was not. There was no USCS number by that name. Couple more unknown covers, but nice designs. Some of you who collect subs may recognize the one in the upper right. These were signed by EWC. I don't know who EWC was. Nobody's ever been able to tie his initials to a name, but he did some very attractive submarine covers. Not very many. I think there's only 4 or 5 that are attributed to him, but they're all pretty covers. Virginia Seath, she was the one who did the Christmas cover that we talked about with the Canal Zone. She did the Flag Day cover in the upper left. And then Paul Parrish, who we talked about earlier, also did the Flag Day in the lower right. A couple more Flag Days, the 4th of July, Gladys Adler, a Lento cover in the upper left, and another Lavina May Mingos with the Abraham Lincoln birthday cover. Another Lavina May Mingos, a very pretty Easter lily for Easter 1936, and a very pretty Easter lily from Val Wolf for 1938. Val Wolf was the one who did the Army Navy cachet that we saw earlier. And some more pretty floral designs. Amory Schaff did most of these. The Mother's Day, I don't know who did.
Yeah, Steve, I just found my tread fin pass from the commissioning of the tread fin.
All right. Here are four very pretty St. Patrick's Day covers. I collect St. Patrick's Day covers. Ted Rotterberg did the bottom two. He was the shut-in we talked about earlier. Paul Parrish did the pig St. Patrick Day cover we saw earlier, and then Lavina de May Mingos did the pretty one in the upper right-hand corner. I don't know who did the potlatch cover, but it's kind of neat for USS California when in Seattle. And the guy who signed the Seminole cover, N.S. Hossey, not a USCS member. Don't know who he was, but it's certainly a pretty cover. Some more pretty covers. Why Helen Dye chose to put a little Mexican sombrero on somebody for Christmas Day, I'm not quite sure. Certainly the witch matches the Halloween cancel, and Cupid matches the Valentine's Day cancel, and the Arctic matches the Arctic. So some nice cachets. Another Ted Rotterberg cancel. This ties to the Moffat chapter, which he was a member of in Chicago. A very pretty Brooks cover addressed to Charles Olasky, who at one time was the ship's writer aboard the USS Brooks. And another pretty Gladys Adler cachet. I like her cachets. They're usually distinctive. After you've seen a few, you can kind of start recognizing them. They're fairly simple, but they're attractive. You know, they aren't complex designs. There's not a lot of artwork on them, but they're like this one here. You know, it's pretty plain and simple, but it's a very pretty cachet. Irene Griffith and Paul Parrish combined on the Armistice Day cover. Wayne Irwin did the lower left. He was a USCS member. Did cachets 1934 through 41, lived in Kelso, Washington. So this is addressed to him. Another Gladys Adler, and then another Irene Griffith. Has a little bluebird for the USS Blue. A very pretty cover, in my opinion. This is the Ford building that was at the California Pacific International Exposition in San Diego. So it's a real building. I believe this is the building that an air museum is housed in right now. Really, it's a really pretty cover, I think. Also addressed to the same Charles Olasky on the Brooks. Just some attractive covers. There's a Lento in the upper right. So again, he made probably 50 or so of those. You could look on the back and it'll tell you exactly how many he made of that one. I don't know who did the panning gold miner with the USS California cover, but it's a nice tie-in to the state. Gary Pelton did this one. Not a USCS member. Must be somebody who just like to do drawings, and certainly the Nautilus ties into the Nautilus shell in this case. And another very nice watercolor of an aircraft carrier, somebody by the initials DW. Don't know who that was. And this one I just think is very attractive. USS Topeka, designed and drawn by a guy named Sturgill. He was a professional magazine cartoonist. And you can tell that when you just look at the picture, you can kind of see how that could have been in a comic book. He was not a USCS member, but he did some covers for about 6 years, 44 through 50. And we'll continue down our museum and see what comes next here. And what we find next are some oil painted postcards. And these are true oil paintings on the postcard. You can feel the oil paint on them. They're thick, they're very stiff, and they're just very pretty postcards mailed from a couple ships, 1913, 1911. May Luta did a lot of oil painted covers. She lived in Los Angeles. I think she was a member of the Reeves chapter also. She did cachets for about 4 or 5 years, 36 through 40, 41. Nice tie-in to the California with the California mission. The Oklahoma cover doesn't exactly tie into Oklahoma. The Pilgrim cover ties into the Pilgrim cancel, Thanksgiving Day cancel. And the upper right is just kind of a message for a couple of people there. Mike Owens was a cover collector. You might recognize the name. He was an ANCS. Another pretty scene for the USS Augusta. And then we have the Wiegand covers. Lots of Wiegand covers, a lot of ship covers, first day covers. A number of people did the drawings and paintings for the Wiegands. These are nice designs for a couple of the submarines that I collect personally. They did quantities 100 to 200, I believe, for most of their covers. P.D. Pittenger, not a USCS member, but a very pretty Memorial Day cover. And a couple more Flag Day covers from Virginia Seath. Very, very pretty painted covers. Does anybody remember the early color copiers? I remember the copies themselves were expensive to get, but you could actually copy something in color at one time. This was done on a color copier. And over the years, it's become sticky. So it's kind of a mess of a cover right now. It still looks good, but if you try to touch it, it's a little bit sticky.
That's a commissioning day cover as well.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever resins or inks they use to do the color copy process in the early designs hasn't held up real well over the years. And with that, we're through the museum. And as I've said every time I've given this presentation, I like to dedicate it to the memory of Bob Rollins. He was a USCS member for years. He was treasurer for a number of years, director for a number of years. Bob was in the Navy. Bob was a good friend of mine, and Bob kind of turned me on to the art and covers. And this is Bob on a cover drawn by Bud Arrington. So with that, we reach the end of the tour, and we are finished. Any questions?
Oh, Steve, that was well done.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone?
Jack Follows was an English person, mainly who did aviation art. All his covers were add-ons. Almost always humorous, frequently showing topless woman on. He did a lot of aviation nose cone type art, and he just did it for fun and sold them to collectors in the U.S. And they didn't. The subject didn't always tie into the stamp or the cancel, but they were always humorous.
Interesting. Didn't know that. Thanks.
Ben Craft, we believe, is a pseudonym. No one's ever been able to figure out who he actually was, and there's some conjecture that there were actually two Ben Crafts because some of the later ones look considerably different than his early work. And one note on my good friend Dave Curtis: for each color, he uses wood blocks or linoleum blocks, and for each color in the cachet, he carves the block a separate time. So if that was a 3 or 4 color cachet, it was carved 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, pretty neat, huh?
So Sabrina is no longer doing covers. Dave and Sabrina got divorced a couple of years ago, and she's no longer involved in the hobby. Dave occasionally does covers now. He's largely been focusing in the last year or two on his paintings that are of a unique style, I'll just say. He likes snakes and other such things. Those are what his paintings feature.
Huh, didn't know that either. Thanks, Foster. Any other questions or comments?
if I can throw one more comment in, a lot of those 1930s were members of what was an organization known as the Art Cover Exchange.
Yep.
Sayeth is one of them. I just got going through the list on the current Art Cover Exchange website, and a lot of names there that match up for those covers. They were all done non-commercial. Just you send me a cover, I'll send you one back.
Yep.
Fortunately, they've been preserved.
Yep, very fortunately.
Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is there a catalog that tracks these cachets?
Well, Bob Rollins he actually made two cachet maker catalogs for the USCS, and they are very short biographical sketches of the artist. He usually would note their USCS membership number or ANCS membership or RCD membership or ACE membership numbers, and usually have a couple of examples. But that's about as extensive as his catalog is.
So there was no like census in it, or? Okay.
For some covers, yes. For most covers, no.
Okay, thank you.
As you can kind of imagine, it's kind of hard to get a census and say, hey, I've got this cover, who else has one? And you may get some replies, but you never necessarily get everybody to reply. So your censuses are very hard to get, I think.
Steve, on the Asiatic fleet covers, you see the very common cachet with the rickshaw. And I just see it so often. Were they mass produced by somebody and distributed?
Not that I'm aware of, Bob.
So one person did them all.
Yeah, kind of a stereotypical design, so it's probably part of it.
Thank you.
Steve,
Sure, John.
I have a listing somewhere. They were made up in the 30s, registered cachet directors.
Yeah.
If you're interested in it, I'll make a copy and send it to you.
Sure, please.
Because there are, I know, naval cachet makers on there.
Yep.
I'll get
Yep.
one to you next week sometime, if we don't float
Thank you.
away.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Comments or questions?
To follow up on Melanie's question, most of you probably know, and all these images, I think it came from the Naval Cover Museum, which is navalcovermuseum.org. There's just a wealth of stuff out there. I know Greg, who doesn't, has been trying to get an example of every registered cachet director, every cachet maker from the 1930s, every ship canceller, every cachet. And if you have something that's not out there, send them a scan of it and it'll be in there the next day or two. Great, absolutely great resource. One of the best things the USCS has done in a long
Gotta
time.
go, gentlemen, ladies.
I actually need to send him these, Foster. These are actually all my personal covers. I've sent a few of these to him, but I should send all of them to him.
I'm sure he'd love to have them out there. That's becoming the closest to a catalog these days.
Yep, that's true.
And Steve, for those that were really cheap and didn't really want to do anything, some guys just put a sticker on the envelope and for commission.
That's attractive.
Send it.
That's attractive too. A lot easier than sitting down and drawing that, huh?
Well, I had one of the duties of stamping all those 28 December 1982s on the jersey, since I was also the postal officer on McInerney. So any McInerney commissioning day covers were all done by me too.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go.
Okay, John. Anybody else have anything? And Lori, I think we're ready to end this meeting.
Okay. I hope you'll all join us next month. We do have one more scheduled. It will be for Taffy 3. David's going to do this sort of a background. I think he's actually going to give you a little bit more Lady Gulf going into Taffy 3. So hopefully you'll join us and we'll do that. Bear in mind that those of us who come here, we're looking for someone to be doing November. So if you're willing to put together a presentation like Steve does, ours will not be that professional. They don't have to be that professional. Steve does a great job, but he also knows what he's doing with PowerPoint. For those of us who do not, we fuddle along. But hopefully you'll join us and hopefully you'll put together your own, and we'll be listening to you tell us about your covers going forward sometime. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, stay safe.